Let's turn our attention over to the fantasy world. Now, we're going to start off by talking about there's a lot of relevant injuries, tanking, COVID activities and things like that going on at the moment. It's a crazy finish to the year, and a lot of key guys are out. So just want to touch on the main people and what's going on, and just make sure that everyone's aware of what's happening and who might be the beneficiary of these injuries, and if there's anyone worth adding as a result of some of these injuries that have happened recently or in the last sort of week or so. So the biggest one, I think, in the last couple of days is obviously James Harden, someone who unfortunately is on my dynasty team and has really hurt my playoff chances, but obviously have to hold him in dynasty. He's out indefinitely with a setback to his hamstring injuries. And I tweeted this out before, but I don't know if you've noticed this before, Cal, but the NBA seems to really struggle with managing hamstring injuries. They just can't seem to get it right.
I did not know that. How so?
Well, when you look over here in Australia and the AFL, we seem to just nail hamstring injuries. It must be something that we're really good at, or maybe the NBA is really bad at, because whenever there's a hamstring here in the AFL, like the Aussie Football League, it's 3 weeks.
We are tougher, obviously. Come on.
Well, we seem to manage it right. It's 3 weeks, and then they're back, and it's all good. These guys, they whack on, oh yeah, we'll review in a week, and maybe he'll try to get back out there, and then they ramp it up, and then there's a setback. Even just another player on his same team, Kevin Durant, was out for months with a hamstring injury. And it was week to week, every week for several months. So whenever I see a hamstring injury in the NBA and they give you a timeline of a week or two, I always bump that out, and usually it's pretty accurate. So obviously sucks for fantasy owners, but I think you need to drop him. I don't think that he's coming back this season, or at least not before the fantasy playoffs are finished. What are your thoughts on that?
I tend to agree. I think it's pretty unfortunate for him. He probably should be out for another 3 weeks just to get some rest for the playoffs.
Yeah.
It's pretty because James Harden is known for his longevity and how tough he is in the regular season. Yeah. If you look at his track record from the 14-15 season, he's gone 81 games, 82 games, 81 games, 72, which was one of the lowest he had, which is still for most players pretty good, 78, 68 in the reduced season of last season. So he's known to just keep on going. And that's why those Houston Rockets had such good records, because he could carry such a load. There were the rumors towards the end of the season before the playoffs that, he's going to burn out, which to some degree in the playoffs, his stats prove that a little bit. But for the regular season, this man is a machine, especially fantasy wise. So it's a bit of a sour taste if you drafted him and now the playoffs are here and he's not there, when obviously you probably would have had to take him 1 or 2 anyway, but it does hurt a bit.
Yeah, it is a bit sucky for owners, and some issues that people have been letting me know on Twitter is that he might be on a can't cut list, which some leagues do have. Usually, if you reach out to your commissioner, they can do that for you and drop that player for you. So obviously, he is definitely someone that you should be, I would say, dropping, because you need to be ruthless. You need to cut people that are not going to be playing for you. Yes, he was your number 1 pick. It sucks, but you got to survive. So drop him, pick someone up, and go from there. Who do you think benefits most with Harden's injury?
That's a good question. I think, Bruce Brown's been playing pretty well.
Yep.
So maybe he's going to get a fair bit more minutes at the because he can kind of play the 2, 3, 4 kind of spot, which is kind of what James Harden did as well. So Bruce Brown, fantasy wise, will get a bit of a boost. Otherwise, Kyrie, obviously, his usage will go through the roof.
Yeah. Obviously, Kyrie's going to get a boost. He's obviously owned. Bruce Brown's a good one, so I think he's a potential add if you want some, rebounding from a guard. Some defensive stats. He put up some big points today. I think he's scoring over 20 points. The other one I'll mention is Landry Shamet, who
he had a 30-point game recently.
He's been putting up some points. He hits a lot of threes, good free throw percentage, but that's about it for him. So he's pretty streaky. So I don't think he's necessarily a must-add player, but if you need, we're going to talk about streaming in a second, points and threes. He's one of my favorite streams for the week next week. So he's someone who I do think you can add if you do need those stats, but probably not a must-add sort of player. The next one we'll talk about Kawhi Leonard. He's had a foot issue, so he's being reviewed next week. Doesn't necessarily mean he's back next week. The Clippers have the worst playoff schedule in the entire league with 3 games over this week, next week, and the week after. So, maybe he's only got a 1 or 2 game week next week. Again, it sucks. It really does suck. If you don't have any room on your IR, or you've got someone who's a bit close to returning. I honestly think you could drop Kawhi Leonard if you are in a very tough matchup and you need to just advance to that next round. If you have an IR spot and it's available, obviously try and store him there because he might be back before the playoffs are finished, unlike Harden. But it's this time of year, you've got to make these tough calls. What are your thoughts on Kawhi?
Yeah, it's a tough call. I probably personally wouldn't be able to do it because he's probably brought you here thus far. He's been having a pretty good season.
Is that a
It'll
great
be
season?
tough to do. It's pretty ruthless to get rid of him.
Yeah.
I'll shout out to Paul George was my second round pick who decided to rest in a week where he doesn't have many games. Come on.
Yeah. 2 games now. Yeah.
So that hurt me.
Went from 3 to 2. Yeah.
Just like that.
It's a rough one. Yeah, it's tough. Like, if I compare him to someone like a Donavon Mitchell, who we're going to talk about soon, if you had to choose between one of those ones, I would probably keep Donovan and drop Kawhi, just because I think Donovan's coming back before Kawhi. They're going to be a bit more cautious over there in Clippers, but he is someone that you could stash because it's a bit more murkier than some of these other injuries. The thing that just makes me scared is that they're saying they're going to review him next week. He's not back next week. He might be back, but he might also be out another week, and then it might be another week after that. He's a very cautious player. We've seen that in the past. They're usually very cautious with his approach. So I am worried that you might be holding him until the end of the season, and he might only come back for a few games at the very end, and by then it might be too late. So, in saying that, is there anyone that's a must-add from this injury, or is it a bit more of a shared amongst the team kind of situation?
I'll do a shout out to Luke Kennard because he's a beast when he gets minutes, especially when he's a heat check kind of guy. When he gets hot, he gets hot. So I think today he was like 6 of 7 from 3-point range. Yeah, he has games crazy like that in him, and he was one of the sole reasons they won today. So he's a guy I definitely add to your waiver wire.
Yep. Yeah, I definitely would. Again, he went off today. There was no Paul George or Kawhi Leonard. So I wonder if that will continue when Paul George gets back. So I would temper expectations there.
He still runs a bit of he's more of a guard kind of, you know what I mean? Like they run a few plays through him.
I've just seen him flop a few times. So I would, he's a good free throw percentage guy, good 3 streamer. I don't necessarily know if he's a must-add player. I personally would have someone like Marcus Morris over him. What are your thoughts on Morris?
Morris is a good ad, 100%.
Yeah, only rostered in 36% of leagues, which I was surprised to find out. I feel like he's been putting up decent stats, good percentages, won't hurt you anywhere. Threes, points, rebounds. Obviously, won't give you much in the way of defensive numbers or assists, but just a good, solid, efficient guy. He's ranked 134th in the entire season anyway. So I think that I would be adding Marcus Morris over Luke Kennard if it were me. Because I feel like he's got more of a chance to stay in the lineup, and they run Paul George as like a 2 or a 3, and Morris as that sort of permanently starting in the power forward position.
I think he's taken the position right now. Like Batum's coming off the bench pretty much indefinitely, and so he has taken his starting role back.
Yeah. I think he's a great ad. Now, keep in mind they've got a pretty shit schedule, but I think 3 games of Marcus Morris, can be better than some of the other sort of 4-game weeks of a lesser player. So I still don't mind adding Marcus Morris to your roster if you need those stats. Let's move on to someone that has been out for a little while, but I still get lots of questions, and that's Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. When can we expect Shai back, Cal?
What's next season. Next season. For pre-season, that's when I'd be expecting him back.
Yeah, me too. I don't think he's coming back this year. I think this is a tank job. Yes, he's got plantar fasciitis. Sure. Or maybe he doesn't. I don't know. Who knows? I'm not in that doctor's room. But I don't think he's coming back. So if you're holding out to answer all those questions, everyone who's asking me, do I drop Shai or do I drop Myles Turner? It's Shai. because I just don't think he's coming back on a team that's just trying to win lottery balls. So I think you can drop Shai. There's probably no one player to benefit because every day there's a different player who's rested, a different player who's out. And so I think you just got to monitor those OKC Thunder because now they're even at the point where they're resting Moses Brown and Lou Dort and things like that. So I don't know. I don't know who they're going to be starting next game. So probably not the easiest team to stream.
Look, if Lou Dort's playing though, you should pick him up. If you hear word that he'll be playing, you should get him on your team.
He's going to be putting up shots, that's for sure. There's no one else that can really shoot on this team. So yeah, he'll put him up. But he's rested the last couple of games, so it's hard to trust them. Let's move on to Myles Turner. He's still out indefinitely. Indiana's got a few injuries. I'll lump in Sabonis to here as well. Even Goga Badatse's had a bit of an ankle injury. So they're a bit decimated in that front court. But if we're just talking Myles Turner, he's out indefinitely. Again, it doesn't sound good. It doesn't sound good. I'm more encouraged to him than Shai, but it's another one of those guys that I'd be surprised if he's back before fantasy playoffs are over. What are your thoughts on Myles Turner?
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's going to be back for the regular season. So I'll be getting rid of him. He ripped something in his big toe.
Yeah.
The plantar plate, probably butchered the name, but
yep.
I imagine that'd be pretty painful. Anything on your foot, even if it's your toes, it can actually be pretty hard because your balance is so off. I remember one of my mates did his small toe, just his pinky toe, and he was out for like a month. Like he just couldn't sprint properly. All the things just wasn't really working for him. And this is the big toe, so I wouldn't be putting my hopes on him coming back in the regular season, honestly. And right now they could be falling out of the playoffs entirely. So
yeah, no, they're having a bit of a slide at the moment, but big men and feet, you don't love to hear about it. So I think, and particularly when it's a soft tissue injury in a foot, the remedy is rest. It's not something that you sort of work in terms of strength and things like that. It's a rest type treatment. So for us, that just means he's on the shelves for longer, and then it's a ramp up back to basketball activities. So it is a slow injury. So again, I wouldn't be holding out hope for Myles Turner. Hopefully players like Sabonis, Goga Badatse can be beneficiaries. They may or may not be back next game. They've been out the last couple, and they've been running a bit of a small ball lineup, but we'll see if that continues. But if Sabonis is out and Goga is back in, I think Goga is an excellent stream and probably a good ad for a good. I think they've got 4 games next week in the Pacers, so definitely someone who I'd be looking at if available.
Yeah, I'm banking on Sabonis needs to come back for me. He just missed that last game.
Yeah.
And he's the beast. I need him in my team. So come on, man. He's game time decision right now. So I'm got my fingers crossed.
I would be holding Sabonis, definitely.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Goat James. He's started basketball activity again, but do you think he's back in time to save anyone's fantasy playoffs, Cal?
He may surprise the world and come back next week. So for finals week, maybe you could get a game out of him, but
I think it's unlikely.
I think it's unlikely too.
Yeah. I'm not holding out hope. He was only in a boot up until this week. And it's LeBron. Like he doesn't care about the regular season. He and rightfully so. He doesn't have to. Like he's solely focused on playoffs and winning a ring. And I think that, he's just going to come back when he's ready, which might be the last sort of few games of the regular season. And by then, fantasy playoffs should be over by then. So if your league goes right to the very end of the season, maybe you keep holding on to him and hold out hope. But I would drop some of these other guys before him. But still, if you need to, I would be pretty happy to move LeBron James and just get some more games played going in there and just survive these couple of weeks. Probably no main beneficiary, although I want to give a shout out to a guy that you picked up, Taylor Horton-Tucker, who's been doing all right.
As soon as LeBron went down, I picked him up. I was like, you know what? He'll get some minutes. He can run the point a bit, just like LeBron does. He's that long guy. I forecasted him getting a reasonable amount of steals as well. Yep. So he's been playing all right for me, especially in the steals. He's actually been doing really well in steals. Let's see what he's been putting up for the past, let's go 14 days. He's put up a pretty respectable, 13, 4 and 4, with 1.7 steals and 1.7 turnovers. So it's pretty good. Just overall for a waiver wire to get the steals and the assists specifically are a big boost for my team.
That's what you're doing in the playoffs. If you identify those as stats he needs, then he's an excellent ad. So I would definitely be recommending that if those are the ones you need. Let's talk about Donavon Mitchell. Had an ankle injury. Doesn't appear to be too serious. So he's someone that I would be hanging on to and could potentially be back next week. I had someone ask me if, like James Harden versus Donavon Mitchell. I said, look, James Harden's not coming back. You keep Donavon Mitchell, even though he's not as good of a player, but his return date is more likely to be back sooner. So in that situation, you drop James Harden, you keep Donavon Mitchell, and hopefully he can help you if you make it to the next week. But again, sucky one. Obviously, the beneficiary here is Jordan Clarkson, who will be putting up a lot of shots off the bench. And looks like Joe Ingles as well. He's had a really big game today. Shooting a lot of threes, getting a lot of assists. Those two will probably be the biggest beneficiaries, and are probably must-own plays anyway.
I think it's probably more Joey Ingles because Jordan Clarkson already had the green light. Let's be clear.
That's true.
now Joe Ingles is actually in the starting lineup, so I think his minutes would just be more in general. So he probably is a must-own right now, to be honest.
I would say he's a must-own. I think not even streaming value. I think he's just putting up top 100 numbers. He's 84th ranked on the season and only 64% rostered. He's just doing enough in assists, points, threes,
those
solid
threes,
percentages.
Real good.
Yeah, excellent. Like putting up 20 games in a row with 6, 5, and 6 threes. Had a game
and he had
14.
that 14 assist game.
Yeah, crazy. Like those numbers in the playoffs right now, that's huge. That's big time. So good luck if lucky if you had him on your roster already. But if he's available, pause this video and go at him right now because I think he's a must-have player. Kevin Durant. When do you think we're going to see Durant back, Cal? Any ideas? He's a bit of a murky one.
No idea. No, it could be the playoffs. Who knows?
Yeah, it's
weird. I have so many question marks for this Brooklyn Nets team. Hey, you got him, James Harden out with the hamstring thing, and then who knows what's happening with Kyrie? Next week. So, very interesting team when this playoffs ramp up. But in terms of fantasy, I would have no confidence in him returning anytime soon.
I'm a bit more confident than you are. I think he had the injury in terms of the hamstring, came back and played a few games, missed a couple.
He banged his knee, didn't he?
It was a thigh contusion. So for us Aussies, that in other words, that's a good old fashioned corky. Obviously they vary in different significance. So, but I think that's an injury that you're not too worried about it becoming a long-term thing, and you can get him back out there pretty quickly. So I think he is someone that if I have the luxury, I am holding, because obviously it's Kevin Durant. Whether or not he comes back with a small little minutes limit, maybe, but I still think it's Kevin Durant. So of all the players we've mentioned today, I think he's the highest priority hold, maybe next to Donavon Mitchell. So we'll see how we go. I mean, they might be conservative, but I think we could see him back next week. And they have a good run next week, the Brooklyn Nets. So I'll hold on to him. A couple of positives. Let's talk about some people who are getting close to returning or have returned. We had a unicorn sighting, Cal. We had Jaren Jackson Jr. play his first game today.
How did he go? How did he put up numbers?
He did. He put up lots of numbers in very limited time.
4 blocks.
Showed us why we picked him in the first place. He's now the 10th ranked player on the season per game.
Wow.
Look at that. Averaging 15, 8, and 4 in 18 minutes. So look, they're great numbers. You're probably not in the playoffs.
You're missing 100% from the free throw line.
That's true. Yep. Maybe if you're like me and you drafted him in the 6th round, then you're not in the playoffs because you wasted a pick and didn't have him for your entire season. Or maybe you're lucky enough that you picked him off the waiver wire and he's on your team and he's there now. He's rostered in 78% of leagues, so he still is out there in some leagues. So again, must roster player in my opinion. He might get some rests back-to-backs, but they've only got one back-to-back I can see in the upcoming schedule on the 25th and 26th. So he might rest one of those games, so keep that in mind. But I think just his uniqueness, I think you swoop in and grab him if he's available. But good on you, Jaren Jackson. And now we know, Cal, that a minute, because that's where he was out. He was going to be out a minute. Now that means 5 months.
Well, what was his injury? Well, what even was it?
He had meniscus surgery in the off season.
Oh, that's right.
Well, so he had a meniscus repair. So what was not clarified in the preseason, it was a repair and not a removal. So someone like Kristaps Porzingis had a meniscus removal. I think it was 3 months after Jaren Jackson Jr. and he returned in January. So Jaren Jackson Jr. had 3 months extra to recover from him at the start and then came back, 3 months later. So 6 months longer timetable than someone like Kristaps. So look, it's disappointing. I'm just more mad at the fact that there was no clarity of this injury. They didn't provide any updates throughout the season. Clearly there was a plan at some point, but it was just not communicated. So lift up your game, Memphis. Come on, let us know what's going on. You can tell I'm a bit salty about that one. And another positive one, another player that was on my team as well that was an unfortunate one. Lamelo Ball. The cast is off. He's back doing basketball activities and may return as soon as next week. Are you, if you're in a good position, Cal, are you swooping in and grabbing Lamelo Ball if you can?
I honestly, when I saw that, I almost considered just picking him up and just putting him on my injury listed list. But I need my ads this week. It's the semis. I'm not going to screw around, but maybe if I've got a spare ad, maybe I'll wait for my last ad on the last day. And if I'm feeling like I'm a reasonable amount ahead, I might actually pick them up. Yeah,
interesting. Okay, see, that's a bit of a conundrum there. It's a tough one, and it will depend on where you're at. If you're on a bye week, just grab him. Obviously, if you've got nothing to worry about this week, just grab him and stash him on your IR. If you are now, I don't even want to recommend if you're comfortably ahead because things can change really quickly. Like you said, I would wait until that last day or two, and if you're very confident that you can hold him on your roster and you've got an IR or IL spot free, then I would add him. But just keep in mind that he might have a minutes limit coming back. He might be rested a little bit. Might be a bit rusty. He's still a rookie. So just want to temper expectations that you don't bend over backwards to add him at the cost of, like you said, your weekly ads and your streaming value, because it's all about survival right now. So, but good news that he's coming back sooner than we thought.